You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to the writingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello everybody and welcome to a Wednesday edition of the Writing Community Chat Show. We're very excited to bring you another guest and another brilliant story, and I hope you can take away lots of advice and a new love for a new author if you haven't already discovered this person. And we're going to have a good chat there. And it's hump day, always a good thing. Not quite a Friday yet, but we'll get there. How's your week been so far, Chris?
I've never heard anyone describe hump day as a good thing.
Is it not?
Well, getting over it, I suppose, it being the end of hump day. I suppose it depends on which adjective you put in hump in.
Yeah, well, I see it as a good thing. So the hump, we've made it up the hump, we're going down the hump, and the weekend is coming fast. Okay. So yes, for me, it's a positive.
I'm glad you clarified that. But yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you to the people that I just met on TikTok. I did a quick TikTok live to promote this show, and met a few people on there in the conversation with us, and that was really good. So thank you. If you are new here, welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. We are both called Chris to make things awkward, historically known as Left Chris and Right Chris for those reasons. And we have over 360 interviews on our YouTube and on our podcast, which you can just find us anywhere really. So yeah, we're steamrolling into season 16. We've got lots of requests coming in, but we're always willing to have recommendations from you guys, either putting yourself forward as guests, or if you have recommendations of an author you love that we haven't interviewed, or perhaps even if you have, they might have some new work coming out. Always keen to hear your recommendations, and you can do that by email or on social media or in the comments right now. We'd love to know who you'd want to see on the show.
Yeah, and season 16 now, is it? So many episodes to go back. The chances are we have already interviewed one of your favorite authors, at least one of them. But yeah, plenty more. And obviously tonight we've got another guest on today who's going to share some writing experience, share how they've got their successes. So that's all good. And yeah, Chris, have you been writing this week?
I have, but it's been a very interesting. I'm glad you asked, because this is very interesting for me. If anyone's followed my writing sort of story so far, you'll know I've always been Team Pantster all the way. I sit there, let my imagination take the story forward, and that's it. Whereas now this is a book that we've discussed how books can be written in two ways. Writing the book that you want to get out, the one you love, which I've done, I think twice now, or writing for the market. And this, for me, is my first attempt at writing for the market. So this is a lot more structured. I've actually put an outline in there, I've put plot points, and it's still a bit of a hybrid. I'm still pantsed in the story, but then I know where it's going, kind of. But what's different about it this time massively is the fact that I've actually slowed it down into each chapter, and then I'm sort of rewriting or editing as I go along. And I know there's been a lot of advice against that, but it's because I'm really into the story at those chapters I'm writing in. So I'm going back and adding things in and buffering it out, where in theory you would do that at the end and go back. But because I've got things popping into my mind, I don't want to forget those things. So I'm jumping back. So what I've done this week is go through the end of chapter 2 and added a lot more to it. So I have done writing, but it's kind of in a static place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, following a structure can be hard. Anyone who's ever tried to do it, it can get in the way of that creativity sometimes. And, fair play to the writers who do it. And I think what it does do is it becomes second nature. Once you've done it once and you've attempted a novel or a story in a structured way, I think what it does is it helps you the next time round just fall into that structure a lot easier and bring that creativity to the forefront as well. But it sounds like you've got a good combination of things there in terms of structure, but still pantsed in. and that's when the good ideas come. So yeah, keep going.
Well, thank you very much for these check-ins. It does help me, it does motivate me, and yeah, I appreciate it. So, everybody, are you ready for tonight's guest? Because I certainly am. Tonight's guest grew up mesmerized by the NeverEnding Story, classic, Star Wars, and The Hobbit. But instead of diving straight into fantasy worlds, he spent years in the legal profession. Then came to a turning point, realizing he couldn't tell his own children to follow their dreams if he wasn't willing to follow his. Since then, he traded courtrooms for cosmos, late-night writing sessions, and imaginative worlds full of fantastical characters. That decision paid off in a big way. He's now a Writers of the Future award winner, the author of the best-selling story The Stench of Freedom, and he even got to walk the red carpet in Hollywood to collect his trophy. From the Gower Peninsula of Wales, in South Wales, to the bright lights of California, please welcome Joel C. Scoberg. Hello, Joel.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing?
We're doing really well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Hope you're enjoying Hump Day.
I am. Yeah, no. Always a day close to the weekend. Gotta love it.
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah. So, how are you doing? How's your summer holidays been? Is that a thing that you actually can do, or are you like me, you still stuck in work?
No, I'm regrettably I'm still a lawyer. I'm working on not being a lawyer, but I'm still a lawyer. So I was off today. We went to the botanical gardens in Carmarthenshire with my wife and 2 kids today. So lovely day out in the sunshine to keep them busy.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah, and in terms of kind of writing, how much of things in like your modern day compared to obviously going through your short stories, how much of that takes up time in your writing day? Does that still happen every day, or is it kind of when you need to work on something kind of more sporadically?
Well, I've kind of got a mixed schedule at the moment. I've been lucky enough to get in work every other Wednesday off, and then it's most evenings now that get the kids down to bed, and then try and snatch an hour or 2 of writing if I'm not too exhausted. But they're getting up early, so I might have to try and swap to early morning writing instead, because I'm finding it hard now in the evenings to mentally drained after a day working and day chasing them around. So it's trying to squeeze it in. It's one of the things I find most difficult, really, trying to juggle everything, is finding a time to write and write consistently, because I'm not someone who can say I have 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. I find that quite hard. I need to sort of get into a flow or get into it. So I find it quite stop-start, which is the hardest thing I find. One of the hardest things I find to manage, really, at the moment.
I mean, in the same boat, working through the day and then trying to fit that writing into the evening. But there are some people that do swap it for the morning at the 5 a.m. Writers Club, for example. So do you feel like you have you might be more productive in the morning because you said you're exhausted by the evening time? Do you think the morning would be better suited for you?
To be honest, it probably is. I mean, when I was at university and studying and everything, even when I was working in offices, I'd always rather get in earlier than later. So I don't really know why I don't do it that way around. I think when you get a chance for a lie-in now with the kids, I sort of think, they haven't been getting up through the night. I'm going to make the most of this. Yeah. So I'm going to stay in bed. Whereas actually, I should really just be writing then and not in the evenings, because I'll be more productive. She might just trigger me swapping my work pattern around a bit, I think, Chris.
Yeah. Anya says in the comments, I write best in the morning. Oh, so good. That's twice now. I write best in the morning because coffee hits my brain then. I think so. I think that is good for people who have a busy schedule. But then you've also got to realize that you've got a day of work ahead of you as well. But yeah, if your mind is fresh to write that story in the morning and being more productive, then yeah, it's all about finding that what works best.
Some of it, I think, as well, when I write in the evenings, I can almost feel like I can keep going. Whereas in the morning, I know I have to stop at some point to work. So I think, it's taking me half an hour to get into something. At night, I might say, I'll push it for another half hour, and then it's a silly o'clock. Yeah. Whereas in the morning, it's I have to go to work. I have to do all that. So, but yeah, it's just trying to find time, really, isn't it? Until you're in that boat. Hopefully, all of us can be in that boat where it's our main job, and you can just treat it as through the day. snatching minutes here and there and an hour or whatever.
Yeah, it's one of those things that people don't often discuss about writers, obviously, until you become really successful. And the money sort of outweighs the money you're earning from a job. It can be quite difficult to sort of find that balance. So it's interesting that you're talking about it. But Joel, I'm really interested in terms of like when writing became something in your life, and is it a moment that you can remember and go, oh, I remember reading this and then that made me want to be a writer? Or is it just something that's happened organically as you've kind of gone on in your life?
To be honest, I've always had a really active imagination, and sure writers will agree. And I've always just read all the time. I remember when I was on holidays, I would get, in a caravan holiday when I was a kid, we get a piece of A4 folded up so it looks like a book, and have a little picture at the top and then words underneath, and try and do that. And in the back of my mind, I always wanted to walk into a bookshop and see a book with my name on it. And that's, for as long as I remember, that's what I wanted to do. But it's not something I felt growing up that was really feasible. From Wales, it's a pretty normal background. Being a writer didn't really seem like something that you would do. I didn't know anyone who wrote. Most of my friends didn't really read that much. So it wasn't really something I pursued. I just went off and did a law degree, became a lawyer because family like it'd be good to have a lawyer in the family, that sort of thing. And it wasn't until I dabbled a bit, and I'd said to my wife, she's one of the first people I'd said, look, this is actually what I want to do. I just kind of felt like a fear of ridicule, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, who are you to write a story? Who'd be interested in what you have to say? That kind of thing. And it kind of held me back for a long time. Until I became a dad, actually. When my daughter was born, I was holding her in my arms. I just thought I wanted her to achieve everything she wanted to do in life. And it was just quite, becoming a parent is quite a profound moment anyway, but it made me realize I needed to show her, and then my son, show them that if you want something, you've got to try and do it. It's better to try and to fail than to, get to the end of your life and regret not trying at all.
Yeah.
So that was really the moment that was I guess a trigger really for me taking it seriously and actually saying, you know what, I'm going to write, I'm going to try and do this, and if I don't, I don't, but I'm not going to regret not trying at all. So it's about 5 years ago now. That's the moment she's born. It was so it's
do you feel like your experience writing academically for your courses and your career helped you with your writing your sort of fiction process, or did you have to kind of relearn that to go down that direction?
It's quite an interesting one, actually, because almost every day I'm writing, but it's often advice now, more recently, and it actually held me back, I think, in one sense, because if I'm writing advice to a client, I might go back and edit it and edit it and edit it and edit it. So, right, check this. So it might take me an hour, 2 hours, and I've written something that's like, I don't know, 20 lines or something, or a page. It's hard to go from working in that sort of mindset to then going into writing fiction, because I'd say I've got this idea, start writing it down, and I glance 3 or 4 lines up and say, I don't really like that word. I'll edit that. And then all of a sudden I'm re-editing the paragraph. And before I know it, I spent an hour editing 3 paragraphs, and then I'm still not happy with it. And it takes me forever then to progress. And it was trying to get out of that sort of mindset and just writing freely. It was quite hard. And to be honest, it was, I could probably touch on it a bit later or whatever, but in this Writers of the Future workshops in Hollywood, we had this exercise where we had to write a short story in 24 hours, and that sounds like a long time, but when I write stories anyway, it probably takes a lot longer than 24 hours if I added them all up. So having to sit down and write something 24 hours, it just taught me or forced me not to re-edit and re-edit and re-edit, and just to write, and actually be able to write to the end and then have a brief edit. It was nice to get that story out. But it's, so to get back, I guess, your question, so I got off in a ramble. Writing as a lawyer it helps because I write all the time, but it is a different type of writing. The structure of it and how I edit that process slowed me down to begin with, because it kind of knocked the creativity out of it and almost became a bit more robotic. And I thought, right, I ditched that draft and start again, which is perhaps why I'm not as prolific or I haven't got a novel under my belt, because with that approach I'll be about 75 before I'd written 50,000 words.
When you went to that, it did that writing exercise with the 24-hour limit, what do you think the purpose of that exercise was?
I think it's based on a writing exercise, an essay, and we had a writing prompt, and it was basically you can get a story out of anything. It's a story article called Magic Out of a Hat, and I got given a broken piece of polystyrene, and they said you got to write a story with that as a prompt. It doesn't have to appear in the story, but we'd like to know or understand how you got from this piece of broken polystyrene to this story. So it's designed to help you and to force you really to actually finish stories, because so many of us might start like, oh, I've got an idea, you start writing, and then you put it to one side and don't finish. And it's just, I think it's just to finish it, and then to be able to say, well, I've done that story, I can move on to the next one. And I guess to get a story from anything around you as well. So it was really useful. It was really helpful. Quite stressful, because
I bet,
I didn't want to be the one person who didn't do it, because we had to submit it then as well to the writing instructors there, so they all knew if you did or did not do it. So it went to the wire, but it was a really useful exercise.
Were there people there that didn't do it? Do you know?
In our group, there are 12 of us. We all did it. I think most of us were down to like the last hour. I think someone was submitting it almost like a minute to go.
Wow.
Checking emails. It was, yeah, and someone had written 15,000 words, so it was quite.
Jeez.
Yeah, they absolutely smashed it in that way. I got about 4,000 words, and most of that was in the morning. So I had an idea, got rid of it, had another idea that didn't work. And it was just, it compresses that writing process. For me, it's almost my subconscious almost. I start writing, and then I fall asleep, and then I might think, oh, okay, actually that would work. And I wake up, I'm going to do this. And it compresses it all.
Out of interest then, how many words should a short story be on average? Do you know? Was there a guide to that? Because 15,000 seems quite a lot.
Yeah. So I think the categories is generally so you have flash fictions, 1,000 up to 1,000 words, sort of 999 words, and I believe then a short story in most places ends around 7,000 words, and then it goes to novelette, which is up to 15, I think, and then 15 to say 40 is novella, and then above that it's a sort of novel. So those are the categories in speculative fiction. There's a lot of, which is the genre I write in, science fiction, fantasy. There's a lot of awards that are the market magazines for sci-fi or fantasy, and the awards are all sort of categorized around those word count sort of thresholds.
So Joel, I think it was Stephen King that said that short stories are notoriously difficult to write, and some people think they're harder to write than novels because obviously you've got less space on the page to actually get the narrative across. So what drew you to writing short stories, and how have you found that process?
That's a good question. I hadn't, before I started writing short stories, it might sound a bit daft, but I didn't actually read that many. I always read mostly epic fantasy, sci-fi, read some thrillers back in the day. When I started writing, I there was old writing sort of advice. I don't think it holds as true now as it used to, that you sort of made your name in short stories if you write sci-fi or fantasy. But what I found was when I sat down and thought I'm going to write a novel and it's 100,000 words, it was quite daunting. You know, I sat there and thought, can I actually do this? I don't know if I can, you know, if I add up all the words of advice and, you know, other things in my outside of writing, yeah, I'd pass that many words. But to think and write a coherent story for that long, it was really quite intimidating. And I had, before I started writing properly, I had so many chapter ones saved on my computer, so many, and there's barely a chapter two. And I thought, well, do you know what? Writing a short story is a good exercise to be able to, and I find it really fulfilling in the sense that I can complete a story, or at least that, you know, yeah, essentially complete a story and have that narrative arc, and I can finish it. So it helped teach me how to tell a story in that in a shorter time word count, but also trying to find time to write. It helped me feel like I was achieving something, like I was making a step forward, because I thought, you know, if I spend 2.5 years coming from a space of, you know, feeling like I'd be ridiculed or whatever for even attempting to be a writer, spending 2.5 years, 3 years writing a novel and submitting it and it getting nowhere or panned, it would have been really hard. And I think it would have really, it probably would have, for me, it probably would have stopped me then and then until I retired. So writing short stories has helped me learn how to tell stories.
Yeah.
And learn how to finish stories as well that I start, and start to develop anyway a thicker skin for rejections from publishers and so forth. So it's almost like an apprenticeship in a way. It's been trying to, you know, change from being a very formal legal advice writing to, this is what I want to be, this is who I am, this is the story I have to tell, this is my voice, and trying to find my feet, I think, really. So it's been like an almost apprenticeship, which is not to say anything for people who write just short stories. I needed it, frankly, to help me to get started.
So how do you go then from somebody who's just starting out, you know, lacking in confidence, starting out with the short stories on an apprenticeship style, to then writing an award-winning short story? Like, what's that process?
Well, it was a surprise first, but the Rise of the Future contest is really good. I mean, the prizes are amazing and everything, but what's really good about it is there's 4 quarters each year, so you get a deadline. So you can write a story and you get a grading. Essentially, there's a finalist, there's a winner, and there's a finalist. So there's top 8 who go through to some of the 4 professional judges, the 3 of which get chosen. There's semi-finalist and there's silver honorable mention, So it's kind of like a grading. So you can submit a story and it comes back and says, I know it's the top 10% or the top 1% or whatever. So you kind of get an idea of, oh, I can write. And that's actually when I submitted one of my first short stories, it came back with a silver honorable mention, which is, I think, the top sort of 50 stories, which is a huge confidence boost for me because it was getting rejections everywhere. And having that 4 times a year, when I started every quarter submitting a story, it gave me discipline and that sort of feedback mechanism. And there's an online community in the contest. So I was seeking critiques as well from other writers to sort of help improve my writing. So it's about 3 years, I think, of trying, 2 years of saying, this is my goal, this is what I want to do, I want to win this contest or be a winner of this contest, and I'm going to focus all my efforts on this. So it was just really a lot of trying and failing again and again and again and again, until I'd improved enough that it you know, thankfully for me, the judges liked it, and I got selected. But yeah, a lot of trying and a lot of failing, and a lot of getting back up. And I guess
What do you think made that book the one to be selected then over the others that you tried with?
I think it's probably the story that has the most, I say, heart in it, without being too cliched. I think when I first started writing, perhaps some of my stories were action focused, or they were cinematic in that way, that this is a sci-fi movie I like, and this is an influence here. And while I was learning how to tell a story, I was getting from A to Z with the story, but there was perhaps something a bit missing, that character development, or that extra dimension to it, or layer to it, that just elevated it beyond that made me stand out a bit more. I think so. I mean, in my story, it's a redemption arc of someone who starts off as a pretty unpleasant person, and this transformation, as I said, becoming a parent, is this sort of theme at the time. It's how you can look, what it would take you to realize you're a bad person and to try and make you be better. And I think that's why I like speculative fiction as well, because you can have these sorts of messages, sort of themes in a story, but then you just put it to the extreme. In my sort of a fantasy sort of set in Victorian type London, but powered by magic. So the setting probably helped as well, because it stood out, I think. But it's finding that story that resonates with people, I think. And that's if I knew how to do that with every story, I probably wouldn't be a lawyer. I'd be a writer full time. But I think that's what pushed me up, is getting a story that resonates more strongly with the reader, and something that is that human, the real human connection.
I think a lot of the people we've had on the show that have been lawyers in the past always seem to go down the crime fiction route. So clearly your love of the Star Wars and those movies and the other inspirations back in the day were kind of the driving force for you to go in this direction.
I'd say it to people. I ended up in law. I think when I was a kid, I was argumentative and liked to read, and I was the first in the family to go to university, so it was kind of, I might fancy doing law. And they said, you make loads of money, and it'd be good to have a lawyer in the family in case any of us get in trouble, that kind of thing. So it wasn't because I had any real drive to do it. And I said to some people that being a lawyer is quite formal, and I almost feel like I put on a mask. I'm a lawyer, but this is who I really am, a writer. I love sci-fi and fantasy. So it's taken me a while to find out who I really am in that sense, and what I really want to do. And I used to read loads of John Grisham books when I was at law school, and then I went to corporate law, and there's a lot of trawling through documents, and it's just I couldn't bring myself to write something about it. I had to have it pure escapism.
Nice. So Joe, obviously you mentioned about your goal being to win this award, and obviously now that you've done that, looking at this collection of anthologies throughout the years, there's so many writers that have this anthology has launched their career. So what's your goal now then? What's the next sort of step?
Well, I think I'd like to get to the point where I'd like to write a novel. That is what I'd like to do, and I would like to publish novels. I think I'll always keep my hand in short stories, because I'm actually reading more short stories now than I ever have. I should have probably started off reading more short stories. Maybe it would take me five years to get to where I am. But I think it's trying to get published consistently, and I think that's why I like the short story markets, because you can write a story, you can get it hopefully sold, and keep your name out there, and work towards a novel. I think my dream would be to walk into Swansea Library with my kids and say, "There's my book, and you can borrow it." That's what I'd love to do, and to have a traditionally published book with my name on it is the dream. So that will be the goal. That'll be the next goal for me. I'd like to keep getting my stories out there and keep getting published. But yeah, that'll be quite a cool moment. That's what I want. Yeah.
So one of the things we ask a lot of writers on the show is obviously like, can you give us any tips? And I suppose in your field of expertise, like what makes a good short story, and what tips would you give to somebody who is trying to write an award-winning short story?
Yeah. Okay, that's a really good question. I think even though a short story is short, it still has the core elements of a story in there. So there's a character, an interesting person in in a interesting environment. There's a lot of interesting. A compelling character in an interesting setting that has a conflict to overcome. So that's the crux of a story, and at least in speculative fiction anyway. So that's the crux of it, and it's sometimes paring it back with a short story, so it's fewer characters. When you get an idea for a story, the more characters start popping in, the word count grows longer and longer and longer, and it might become a bit unwieldy. So with a short story, there's a lot less. Tend to be a lot leaner. So in that sense, it's keeping it clear in your mind what the story is without diverging off. And I think finding a story that will resonate with people. I think that's what happened with my story. How I think it got selected. So having a story that I think moves people, but it leaves people thinking afterwards. Perhaps poses a question and asks people, what would you do in that sort of situation? Gets me thinking about it beyond the last page. It's easier said than done, obviously. I don't know if that's actually helpful advice or just write this to be a millionaire, and I don't know how to do it, so I haven't done it. But it's it's keeping an eye on a word count is quite hard. When you write a novel, you have a lot more space to be able to explore a character or this or that, and it's getting to the crux of the story straight away. You have less room to have. You can't have a prologue. You can't have one or two chapters leading up to the inciting incident. You almost need to be end of page 2, 450 words in. What's the hook? Who's the character? What's the setting? What's the likely challenge going to be? So that sort of the first 2 pages. You probably have that roughly there, and then by the end of page 5, the story should be well on its way, which is very different to a novel with you're allowed more room to explore, I think. So it's concision.
No, absolutely.
So when you're writing short stories, then obviously you're creating loads of different worlds, and I was reading on your website you've written over 100 short stories. Are any of those sort of worlds that you're building, are they connected, or are the characters staying with you longer than the short story and you might go back to them and expand their sort of narrative out? What's that sort of process like when you're creating different worlds?
I think when I did that 24-hour story I mentioned, what happened, I was struggling for a little bit because I was tossing ideas out, and I went back to a world that I just sold a short story fund to a Welsh magazine called Gwyllion, and I had that setting in my head. It's quite fresh, and I thought, oh, this is quite fun. I could just set a different story there. So the way my mind sometimes works with stories, I often come up with a setting. I think, oh, that'd be cool, and then I almost have to find people to put in it. So I then think of what to do. So I sometimes have quite a few ideas generally for worlds, and not people as such, but those settings are more of what I've developed more of. And then it's the beauty of short stories is it allows you then to explore worlds in different ways. So in a novel, you can have here's the world of whatever, the Shire, and they leave and so forth. With a short story, you could have more stories in the Shire, so you could explore different facets of it. So you could, learn more about Farmer Maggot and whoever else, like his backstory, who he was. So short stories allows you to explore more of that. And I think as I write novels, I'd probably write ancillary short stories to expand and more, and also even add the depth to a world before you've written the novel. You sort of flesh it out, and it gives you that opportunity to test it out, what works, what doesn't. It's almost like not quite research for a novel, but if you explore enough settings, you get a feel for if there's potential for a longer story. Because sometimes you might write something and you think, this might not have the legs for that many words. So it's quite good to, and same with characters. You might start around a character and you think, I can only write so many words with this guy because I don't really like him, or I don't know if he's she's compelling enough to keep people invested for that long. So it's a way of finding that out as well, I think.
Nice.
Brilliant. Right, what we're going to have to do, Chris, we're going to have to play our Amazon KDP advert. And then when we come back from that little advert, Joel, you can tell us all about your story, award-winning story, and maybe what you're working on at the moment. And then it's time for you guys to send some questions in for us to ask our guest. And we'll ask our staple questions after that as well. So coming up is an Amazon ad that we're sponsored by at the moment, which is incredible for us. But also, we wouldn't promote anything we do not agree with or think is a benefit to you. If you are self-published or going down that route, you need to pay attention to this advert. So here it is. Hey writers, what if Hit and Publish could earn you a massive £20,000?
Oh, yeah, imagine. Well, you don't need to imagine, because that's exactly what's on offer with Amazon's Kindle Storyteller Award 2025. This amazing literary prize is back for its 9th year, and it's open to anyone who self-publishes a book via Kindle Direct Publishing in any genre.
Any genre. Yeah, whether you've written your first or your 10th novel, it doesn't matter. If it's unpublished and written in English, then you can enter that award with a chance of winning.
Yeah, and it's really easy to enter. So just publish your book through Kindle Direct Publishing between the 1st of May and the 31st of August, and make sure it's enrolled in KDP Select.
Yep, I think you'd be absolutely mad not to, as a £20,000 prize would help any author boost their career massively. And our previous guest and last year's winner, JD Kirk, said that it took his career to the next level after winning that award and taking it home.
Yeah, and it did. These books are everywhere. So in order to enter, head to amazon.co.uk/storyteller to find out more. The Kindle Storyteller Award is open now. So publish, enter, and get your story out there.
Yeah, we'll support you all the way. You know we will do that. So we'll leave you with this. Good luck. The WCCS, together as one, we get it done. So there you go, guys. It's only 20 odd days that are left of this month, which is the end of the competition, or the end to enter the competition. So please do, if you're thinking about it, do it. You can find out about the information on the link that's in the description, and it'll take you to the page which gives you all the details. Plus, all you literally have to do is put a keyword when you're uploading your manuscript to KDP. That is literally all you have to do to enter the competition. And we have had 2 guests on recently that had no expectation to win that competition and walked away with that £20,000 prize. So do check it out if you're interested. Don't miss out on the opportunity. But yes, it's there for you. So with that out the way, Joel, the Stench of Freedom. Can you let everybody know what that's all about, please?
Yeah, so the Stench of Freedom appears in Right of the Future, Volume 41, which is out now in the UK. So it's a story set in a Victorian-esque London, that sort of vibe. It's a fantasy story, so it's powered by magic rather than... it creates a world that's, I think there's an industrial revolution, but powered by magic rather than steam. And it's a story about a chap called Hoalavon, who's an earther, so he can control earth magic, and these earthers, they go and they capture people who can control lightning, and the lightning powers the city. So they summon lightning, and these earthers keep them under control. He's a pretty unpleasant chap to begin with, and the story is about how he realizes he's a bad person, effectively. He becomes a dad, and it explores the transformation of becoming a parent. It makes you, to me, you see the world differently. Everything, all of a sudden, you're not the most important person in the world. Your ambitions even are second to this little person in your life, and his son is in danger, and it forces him to reevaluate his life and realize who he actually is. And he doesn't really like what he sees in the mirror, and it's a story about how he's trying to redeem himself, if he can, that is. So there's magic and fighting and the like, and I hope you like it. It's 15,000 words, so it's the longest one in the book, but it's, I guess, a novella. It's, yeah, I hope you will enjoy it. I had a lot of fun writing it, and it's always quite visual. There's a story, there's a picture, actually. The illustration for the story is the Rise of the Future contest is a sister contest called the Illustrates the Future. So that's the illustration that accompanies my story. So that gives you a feel for the setting. So I hope it's quite atmospheric. It's a bit gritty, and it's about a man trying to be better and be better for his son, and also ask the question: is it ever too possible? Is it ever too late to turn a corner and be a better person? Can you ever atone for what you've done in the past? So it looks at that as well.
Nice. Being the winner then, and being a competition winner with this short story in the anthology, does that put more pressure on you in terms of people are going to come to this anthology and go, "Oh, I'm going to read the winning story first and see what that's about"?
Well, I'm one of the winners. I didn't win the grand prize. It was so I was one of the, my story came third. But yeah, there I think there is an element of there's thousands of people enter the contest. So I think there's an element of people looking at it and saying, why did this one get in? You know, why doesn't my story get in? And I know when I was my stories were getting rejected, I look at the other stories and think, oh, how does mine compare? What was it that was in this story that is better than mine, or was different? Or, and you know, stories, they're so subjective. You know, I'm sure between the three of us, we all have the three different favorite books. You know, and it's so hard to and also to look at your own work objectively. But I think there is an element of, well, is this any good? And to be honest, when there's reviews have come in, I have been like, look, yeah. I heard something. I think it was one of the chaps on Writing Excuses podcast said something like, if he's had a bad review, he goes on Goodreads and looks at the 1-star reviews of Lord of the Rings, and is like, do you know what? I'm all right with the universe, because if Lord of the Rings get 1 star, I can accept the bad review for my story. So that's what the mantra I live by now as well. So
yeah, that's great advice. If you're feeling down, go and look at the 1-star reviews of all the big books out there, because they've all got them.
Yeah,
absolutely. And interestingly, you talked about the settings, all the different worlds that you create, and settings come to you kind of before anything else, which I find kind of fascinating. So why the Industrial Revolution, but with magic? Where did that come from? Because that's very unique.
I think some of it's because being from Wales, the Industrial Revolution played such a key role in our recent history and culture. It's a big deal in Wales, and I think it lends itself well to ideas of conflict. There's a huge progress in society at the time, technological progress, a load of people coming together in creating huge cities, and a lot of exploitation and a lot of abuse, and there's also the rise of political movements for human rights and things. So I think there's a lot of potential
Yeah.
to write something. There's a lot of human stories that don't get told, and it just I had this idea in my head for the story. It might sound a bit like someone should come and speak to me, but of someone sat in a chair getting struck by lightning, and I was like, who is that guy? Why is he in the chair? What's the lightning for? And my thought process or spiral to, well, actually it could be a city powered by this lightning. And then I thought, industrial revolution, how many kids and stuff were put down the mines in Wales, and to power the industrial revolution. It's that, looking at that side of the story. I'm from a normal working class, low middle class background. I don't rub shoulders with generals and senators and all these important people. I'm just a normal person. So the stories that I know and people I know are of normal people.
Yeah.
So what I'm drawn to is that kind of, almost, where would my ancestor be in the Industrial Revolution? They'd be the one in the mine. They'd be the one getting exploited. So I want to tell a story from that perspective rather than the mine owner or whatever. So there's an element of that as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Nice. Okay. Anybody in the chat, if you have questions for our guest Joel, please do send them in, and we'll start asking our staple questions in a minute. But before we do that, so that's what you have done. Mentioned Chris did earlier how many, I said that like Yoda. Mentioned earlier, Chris did, the over 100 short stories you've written. But what's on the cards for you next? Are you looking at developing any of these fantasy worlds into something bigger? Is that novel getting closer in terms of goals?
Yeah, I've sat down. I'm trying to plot out a novel now. I did have an idea of what my wife said: if you can have a story written and ready to pitch for the next Dragon Con, which is a big convention in science fiction fantasy, you can go meet editors and stuff. It's in Atlanta, in Georgia, for 2026. That would be the target. We're actually expecting a child in December, so I think it might be 2027. Aiming for that now. So it's trying to set myself that target. I'm going to sit down and plot it and try and get, hopefully by this time next year, I'll have a first draft. And then I think that's fairly realistic. I hope it's the middle of August nearly. And then I start editing it and then look to sort of pitch it then. So that would be the ideal. And, the life cycle of the story, then from starting to write it to pitching it and moving on to the next one is, it all takes a number of years. So it's just trying to get also the mental block, I think, out of the way of I haven't written a novel. I've written loads of short stories. I've not written a novel. So I still, as I said earlier, I feel daunted. I still feel daunted sitting down and writing 100,000 words. So I need to get that. I know I can write a story. I just need to add another 0 to my word count. So I need to get that mental block done. So I just need to sit in my chair and write and stop procrastinating.
I think break it down into sections, man. It's got to be the way for you. You can already write 15,000 words. Break it all up, section by section, put it together. You're there. You've got it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. I think, I'm always open. I'm always looking for, ideas. And, I like hearing from other writers that works for them. Someone might turn around and say, oh, I do it this way. And I think, well, actually, that's a brilliant idea. I haven't done it that way. So I'm always open to hear, what yourselves, how you guys write best and what works for you. And that's the beauty, I guess, of these podcasts. You listen to it and say, oh, that actually rings, that sounds good for me. That would work.
Well, I'm thinking, obviously, you mentioned your influence of Star Wars, and Star Wars for me is essentially lots of short stories put into one overarching big narrative. Because you can take all the singular characters and you could say, oh, they've got their own journey. That is essentially a story within itself. But then it all fits into this one overarching theme. And I think if you did something like that, obviously coming from the short story background, if you said, I'm going to give, 5 or 6 characters, 10 to 15,000 words, and then I'm going to fold them all in together, it could work really well. That's just one way you can do it.
I hadn't thought of Star Wars like that. That's really interesting. Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you very much. You'd be in the acknowledgement section of.
There's some people in the chat. Halo has arrived, so thank you, Halo, for joining us. It's great to see you all. She literally says Star Wars in reference to your fandom. You love it.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good writing tip there, Chris. I think that does work really well with what you've described as your writing style. For me, it's gone in a combination of ways, but just going from hundreds of words a day, maybe 1,000 or 2, when I can fit it in. It's like you take that pressure off and it'll build. You just consistently add to it rather than, trying to force out 100,000 words by a certain date. I think if you can comfortably put down some sort of progress daily rather than a big expectation of, say, I've got a 5,000 word target, you might stress yourself out trying to hit that. Mm-hmm. If you're literally writing a few hundred words a day, it'll become a habit, and then it'll be more of a nagging habit that you want to get back to it rather than you're overwhelmed, if that makes sense. So that for me is a better option. Yeah,
Ben Aronovich, who came on the show, we were asking him about the sort of day-to-day of his actual writing, and he said, between 150 and 450 words, that's what he gets in every day. He says, you know what I mean? So, and he said, and it just all adds up. By the end of the year, you've got a book. And he's been doing that for a long time now. And obviously the Rivers of London series is massive.
Yeah. Wow.
So if it works for him, then it can work. He's doing really well with it. So, yeah, maybe just take the pressure off that way and just say, I'm going to do a minimum of 150 words. If I get to 400, great. But, the 150 is what I'm aiming for. And, most people, realistically, if you're not going back and editing, you could probably do that in about 10 minutes, I reckon. And then, when you've got final draft at the end of the year or first draft, then you can have some fun editing and stuff.
I think we can get in our own way sometimes. You set these perhaps arbitrary deadlines. I do all the time. I work best off checklists. I need 5,000 words. It's being kind to yourself. And life gets in the way. So maybe the 150 to 400. And if it was for Ben,
honestly,
and the Rivers of London is huge. So
Well, the way you describing, you've got a day job, you've got a family, a young family. That's very time consuming, and you're finding the time at the end of the day or in the morning. And if you're putting too much on there, it's going to become almost not an annoyance, but you want to do it, and you're up against doing it. Whereas if you break it down smaller, it might be more of an incentive for you to, I've got that time. I know it's manageable. It's more of an enjoyable experience. Because the last thing we want to do is put too much pressure on where we can't actually perform because we're built up too much to it, if that makes sense. So I think that might work. Maybe just break it down, try it that way, and then change. I mean, that you nailed it on the head about these conversations and getting the tips from them, from what people do. And that's what we've kind of got most of the advice from this show, over 360 interviews of people saying how they do things. So that's kind of where we do get a lot of the advice from. Let's look in the comments then. We've got Anya Pavel. Thank you so much. If you could take a writing retreat anywhere, where would it be?
Oh, is that based on somewhere I'd like to sit on the beach, or somewhere I'd like to write, or with whom?
Yeah, writing retreat generally, I think somewhere you could go anywhere and just sit there and write.
I quite liked, my wife and I went on a holiday to Iceland a couple of years. I've got a Swedish ancestry, and I hadn't been to Scandinavia before, and I got off the plane and it was brisk all the time, really chilly. And my wife was like, this is so cold, I don't like this. I was like, I feel like at home. So somewhere like with mountains or something, or I'm by the beach in Swansea, so I see that all the time. That sounds, I'm very lucky. So somewhere really different to that. So I think somewhere
North
Yeah.
Wales.
Yeah, North Wales. Yeah, Snowdonia. Oh,
Yeah.
there's the Gladstone Library. They do writing retreats, I think, don't they? So
She said, yeah, Iceland's amazing and moody in the best of ways.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And from Halo, late to the party, sorry if this has been discussed, but do you view setting as another character? And have you changed setting to better fit the story? I think that would be a yes.
Yeah. I come up with settings often first, and I almost think this sound to me. I think that sounds cool. I want to explore this world, so I always need somewhere that feels very alive and vivid. So it's almost, I think some people see big cities as characters in themselves, and as that as a setting. So I think so. Yeah, if you're on a spaceship or something, or some big city or moon or somewhere in space, I think the setting is in its own way a character, because it's so much part of the story, especially in the genre I write anyway. It's not something that just falls into the background. It's very much in the story. So I'd say yeah. And I'd probably setting the better for the story. I think it would depend, changing the setting to fit the story. I think as you write the story, what you thought in your head might work, might butt against something else, and there's give and take. I think with changing the setting to the story and changing the story to fit the setting.
Yeah.
If you got something that's really cool in the setting that just does not work for the story, and you can just tweak the story so you keep that cool thing in, I would probably do that.
Brilliant. Yeah, if you've got questions, keep sending them in, because we've still got a little bit of time left. I'm going to ask one of our staple questions now, which is, if you could take any character from fiction and make that character your own, which character would you choose and why?
Yeah, I've always liked Radagast from Lord of the Rings. So he's the brown Radagast the Brown. He's look as sort of a druid kind of wizard. So there's Gandalf the Grey, and there's Saruman, who all the headlines they feature in it. And Radagast, I know if you've seen the Hobbit movies, is got an interesting adaptation. But I like this character. He's sort of there to, he's got an affinity with animals and protect the Middle Earth. And I wondered what he'd be doing now after the events of Lord of the Rings. They can live forever. He disappears in the background, sort of like eco-fiction. He's here for climate change. What would he be doing now to address biodiversity decline and global warming? And what would he be doing now? So I thought I've always liked that character, and he's one of those characters that in the source material there's not much about him. So sometimes it's like Boba Fett in the original Star Wars. You get a glimpse of him, you think, wow, that guy's pretty cool. I want to know more about him. And Radagast has always had that draw for me. So I'd probably say
nice. Yeah, that's an interesting answer, one that we've not had before as well, which is good.
Yeah. Okay, if you could take the ending of anything in the world of fiction, whether this be a TV show, a movie, or a novel, and change the ending, what ending are you going to choose and why?
Okay. So one of my favorite books is 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini, and it's, if you don't know, it's a story set in Afghanistan. It's sort of a mother-daughter, or found mother-daughter sort of story. And one of the point of view characters is a woman called Mariam, and she has a pretty wretched life, really hard, abuse, really terrible life. And she gets the story is like 20 years old, so am I allowed to give a spoiler alert for, I guess you're asking for the ending, spoiler.
Yeah, go for it.
So she gets executed by the Taliban. She kills her husband, who was abusing the daughter, the mother-daughter relationship, but she's actually, the husband's actually married to both of them, so he's got two wives, and she ends up killing him after he's been abusing her for years and years, and she hands herself in to the Taliban, and she gets executed. So the other wife can escape Kabul and go to Pakistan, and I remember reading this book, and it's the first book that ever made me cry. I was on the bus home from work, and I was reading it. I'd always just read thrillers before that, and I was like, "What's happening?" I'm just like, I'm just welling up here, trying to hide. Everyone's looking at me. It's like, "What's going on?" And I've always felt I'm a sucker for a happy ending, and it's a very powerful moment in the book. And I know it might take away from it, but for me, I just wanted her to escape and live happily and have a nice ending, rather than have this horrible end to a horrible life. And yeah, even now I'm just like, well, I've got it. I love the book. And yeah, I wanted her to have a happier ending for the life she had.
Yeah, Anya says it's a great book, emotionally devastating, which you just clearly defined.
Yes,
And she said that she definitely deserved a happy ending. So yeah, maybe you could change that one for us. Maybe not in reality, but yeah, we'll just pretend that happened.
Brilliant. So Joe, obviously we're getting to the end of the show now. But where can people find your work? Where can people stalk you if they want to, find you on social media, read your stories, things like that?
I'm always terrible at saying this, so thank you for asking. I've got my website up underneath my name. I'm on Blue Sky and Instagram as well. I always forget. It's just my name, Joel C. Scoberg, so you should be able to find me there. I have a newsletter as well, which is just the books I love and what I'm up to and my thoughts on writing. But yeah, find me on my website, joelcscoberg.com. And yeah, hopefully I've been of interest, and I've had it's been really nice chatting to you all, and hopefully I haven't just spoken rubbish and someone's found a nugget or something useful or interesting or entertaining or whatever what I've had to say. But
brilliant.
If you want to hear more.
It's been great to hear your story, and I'm sure people have definitely resonated with it. And we've got a few fantasy lovers that like the show, so I'm sure they will go and check out your work.
And before you go, I'm going to ask you one more question. So 3 short stories, 2 that are recommendations, 1 of your own that you would recommend for people to read. What are those 3 stories?
Of short stories, you say?
Yeah.
I've just been reading a collection by Ken Liu, who is he's actually a former Writers of Feature winner as well, but he translated 3 Body Problem, and he's also written a collection called the Paper Menagerie, and that's the short story collection. But the titular book, the story in that Paper Menagerie, is brilliant. I definitely recommend that short story. And I'm just finished a short story by Ted Chiang, who's intimidatingly intelligent as a writer. The story is Story of Your Life, and it's the Arrival, the sci-fi film with Sandra Bullock, is adapted from that story, I believe. So that's brilliant as well. Those 2 are excellent writers. Of my own, the story I'm the most proud of probably is this one that's in Rise of Feature, Stench of Freedom. Another one I've written recently, which is in a magazine called Gwyllion magazine, which is a Welsh magazine that promotes Welsh writers and stories set in Wales. It's called The Swampton Shuffle, and it's set in a fictionalized Swansea Bay, which has been turned into a massive rubbish dump, basically. And the story is set in that rubbish dump, with people searching and fighting each other for a mythical object that will hopefully make some of them rich. So there's a lot of scoundrels chasing each other about. So it's fun. Lots of different points of view, hopping around. If that sounds like a cup of tea.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. Yeah.
There's a lot of good recommendation on the show, so that's great. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
For those who are, or like myself, probably forgotten what Joel said about where to find him, we will leave links in the description of the show and on YouTube and on the podcast. Please do hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so, and leave a comment on social media or on the show. If you want to ask any questions to Joel, we can pass them on, I'm sure. And if you've got any advice for him about the writing, how to write his first novel, we'd be open to pass those on as well. So yeah, please get involved in that sense. Joel, from us, it's been fantastic to chat to you. Honestly, it's great to hear your story, and I'm really kind of intrigued to see where you go with it, and if you can make it to, again, my memory, wherever you said you go in 2027, to that festival. And I hope that we do see your updates, that you are writing that full-length novel and you do get there. So yeah, wish you all the best of luck with that.
Thank you so much. It's very kind, and it's been I've loved being on here. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
No worries. Thank you very much, everybody. We will see you Friday. So don't forget, this is not Friday. This is Wednesday, but we will be live on the show again Friday. So we hope to see you there. Thank you for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of Hump Day, everybody. See you all soon. Bye-bye.